Hey everyone, my name is Bert Cook. I'm the Executive Director of the Porte Economic Advancement Partnership. Welcome to the third House session. We're very pleased that you can join us this morning. Obviously, we have a great group of legislators with us, and I'll introduce them here momentarily. But before I do so, Fonda, we'd like to thank you and the library for hosting us. I think this is a terrific space. Just out of curiosity, how many people have been in this space previously? So this is a lot of people's first time, which is great. So Fonda, we hope that there'll be some new people and members coming to you because of this event.
If anyone has time to stay after, we're happy to give you a tour of the makerspace on the other side. So we love talking about that. Because a lot of it is funded by our community partners, and we appreciate it.
Thanks again, Fonda. So this morning we will start with about 7 minutes from each of our legislators updating you on particular items of interest and items that they're focused on this legislative session. And then when we're done with that, we'll have question and answer. So please, if you have questions, we'll get to that, and you're more than welcome to ask those. I think our legislators will be eager to provide some answers for you. So first and foremost, we'll do some introductions. So we have State Senator Mike Bohacek with us this morning. State Representative Jim Pressel. President of the LaPorte County Council, Randy Novak. County Commissioner Connie Grammaroso is not able to be here this morning, but we have City Council President Tim Franke. And the Mayor of the City of LaPorte, Tom Dermody. And we will start with State Senator Mike Bohacek.
Thanks for coming. It's a beautiful place. I've never been here before, Fonda. I'm looking forward to taking a tour at another time. I've got another commitment later on. But thanks for coming out. I'm going to take a lot of things from Jim, so it's going to make it a little tougher for him. So we've just crossed the halfway point. So the Senate bills are in the House, and the House bills are now in the Senate. So we're putting our own touches on each of those bills. You would think that after they've been through the committee process and through all that process on the other House, by the time it gets to either the Senate or go back to the House, there wouldn't be a lot of changes yet to be made. And really, it's amazing how much stuff we all miss during that committee process. So that's what we're in the process of right now. I sit on local government. I sit on criminal law, corrections, and health. So it's kind of a broad reach on a lot of different topics. But right now on the health side, I don't know. We've had some conversations about our Medicaid funding. And our Medicaid funding being overspent by about $900 million. We're trying to find some strategies to fix that hole, and also how they became so short on the money and how they missed their projection. Something they're looking at is removing the ability for family members to take care of critically ill children. So right now we have a nursing shortage, everybody knows it. So if you have a child that was on a ventilator or a feeding tube or those kinds of things, you would typically need skilled nursing to assist with that. Well, what we allowed a few years ago was to us just to pay the parents to do it, and the parents would take care of their child because what's the nice thing about parents? Well, they don't call off sick, they don't go on vacation, and it's their kids, so they care about them. So that program had a lot of uptake that they didn't think was going to happen. So they're looking to change that reimbursement model to cut it by almost 60% for a family member of reimbursement. It's a pretty big hit. So we're trying to work through that and how that's going to play out. We continue to look at prior authorization issues. We're looking at healthcare availability. We've already recognized that our availability for labor delivery services in the state is pretty thin. We don't see that here in LaPorte County because we've got the hospital here in LaPorte. We also have the Franciscans up in Michigan City. But if you get in Marshall County or in Stark County, there is no labor delivery. There is no OB/GYN services. So if you're a mom, you're driving 50 miles to deliver a baby. And is that really the space that we need to be in? And we need to start looking at how are we going to make that availability substantially better. So I'll keep going with that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of individual legislation. And I'll let Jim talk about some of the stuff he's got going on too.
Thank you. State Representative Jim Pressel.
Good morning. Really? That's all we got?
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, now I know you're awake and you're with me. It's been a quick session. We're in a short session, so I'll talk a little bit about the process and then dive into what I think is happening in my universe. In the General Assembly, we all have our own universe. Folks are experts in this area, but they're not so much in the next area. So we rely on folks to come to Indianapolis and educate us. And I've heard from, and I've seen so many of you just recently, it's nice when you come there and tell us what the issue is and really provide that education. And speaking of education, the educators were there yesterday, and I had a great conversation, and it actually spurred me on to think about what was really taking place. And I want to thank Mr. Anderson for putting that in my mind. Fonda comes down and she talks to me about the education issues. Or not the education, but the library issues. And outside of the library, what's going on in the district with libraries, and then we get off topic and talk about everything else, which is good. Carrie comes down and she advocates for her industry, which I know nothing about, pesticides, but I have to place a vote on those issues. So if I don't hear from anybody, I'm just kind of flying blind. So I really do appreciate everybody that comes down and tries to educate me. Allows us here to communicate through text messages, emails, phone calls, and they are relentless. But it's their issue, and it's important to them. It's important to their industry, just like it's important to your issue. The realtors, when I meet with them, I can go on and go on and go on. So the short session, we're not doing a whole lot unless it's your issue. And we started off with about 800 bills. Those are narrowed down to probably 300. So 500 have died so far. By the time we leave there, maybe 250 are going to pass, so, which is good. We shouldn't be doing much in a short session, is my opinion, right? The long session is the budget session. Short session should be to correct errors from the previous session. But as legislators, we can't seem to help ourselves. We want to file legislation all the time. Sometimes it's the same legislation. Sometimes that's good too, because it takes 4 years to get something done. Committees that I serve on are government regulatory reform. The hot topic in that one is AI. You're all reading about AI, and what does that mean? We're trying to figure that out. The federal government is not taking an active role or an active enough role, in my mind, to protect us all from what could be coming with AI. So we're taking a deep dive on that. I don't know that we're going to solve the issue. Let me backtrack. We are not going to solve that issue, but we are going to try to protect everyone that we can. Elections, I serve in there. Security, election security, it's important to all of us. So we have passed a couple bills that I think gets us closer to bulletproof security, but there's still some gaps. We've now attained that 100%. Indiana's in a great place, one of the best states for election security. We're striving in that committee to make it better. I chair roads and transportation. We've been doing a lot in there, and we're really setting the stage for what's going to take place next year. Indiana is at a pivotal moment in what's going to happen with road funding. How do we collect it? As BEV, the battery electric vehicles, total 100% plug-ins, the hybrid and plug-in combination continues to grow at a very slow pace. All of the revenue that we pay for roads is collected at the gas pump. So as you can imagine, they're not paying for that road. Well, they are, a little bit. It's the supplemental registration. Last year I raised the registration to be equivalent to what the average driver would be paying at the pump, and that is derived at about 12,500 miles a year. And the average of the last mile per gallon, which is about 25. So that mile year increases when we use last year's mile each year. So that's about equivalent to it. But as we go forward, in about 2030 to 2032, depending on how many of those vehicles actually are bought and registered in Indiana, the dollars that we collect at the pump that goes to INDOT, that comes back to locals, that goes into community crossings, is going to decrease. And with the 30 to 40% inflationary costs that we've seen on projects that we plan 5 years in advance, we're going to have a problem if we don't make a change. You hear about adding capacity. We need 6 lanes all the way from Michigan or Illinois on 65. We need 6 lanes on 70 all the way across. Indiana continues to grow. We have the fastest growing state in the Midwest. That's a fact. So as we bring all these economic development products to Indiana, we need to move those goods. Am I over my time?
No, you're perfect.
I'm perfect. So we need to move those goods. How do we do that? We need the added capacity because our roads are full. If you travel on 70, if you travel on 31, if you travel on 30, we need that capacity. Well, how do we pay for it? And it should be user fee based. How are we going to get there? So I'm part of the first task force that started meeting last year, and we are charged with coming up with some kind of policy to move forward with and what that looks like. The third part of that problem is really the CAFE standards that the federal government is about to put out. So if they go to 50 miles per gallon on the CAFE standard, and we're using 25 miles per gallon as our standard to figure out what that gas tax should be, that's a huge void, right? So if they're going to get that kind of mileage, my revenue to replace and fix the roads, we've got a serious problem. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Some of the bills that I've worked on that have died that I'm really passionate about is prior auth. I know we've got a hearing in the House. The Senate had a priority prior auth bill that didn't do well, and they killed their own priority bill, which is
It did well if it did $1 billion fiscal.
That's why the House is always better with fiscal issues, and it should start there, right? So I didn't get a hearing. It's pretty narrow. I'm confident I will get a hearing next year. And then gaming redistribution. So I had that bill for 2 years. It moves a little bit. I didn't get a hearing this year. At the end of the day, for Porte County, what that means is about another $2 million a year. And it takes out, how do I get there without affecting somebody else? I take out what I call the trust fund babies. In that gaming redistribution, it would eliminate like the state fair. The state fair receives $50 or $60 million. It's just here's a check. I don't know about you, but I think they should tell us what they're doing with that $50 or $60 million. And if they need that, they should come to the budget committee and they should ask for it. And they should say, this is what we're going to do with it. Because that $50 or $60 million belongs to all of us and host communities to use those dollars. As the gaming revenue drops, and I'm sure the councilman would agree with me, we go to Riverboat as a backstop. And it's actually probably, in my mind, it has become part of the budget. It really shouldn't be like that. So trying to move that $2 million back to the Porte County. With that, I'll do.
Thank you, Jim. County Council President Randy Novak.
Good morning. I just want to start off with saying that the people that are up here on both sides, is what's great about it is you can pick up the phone. Anybody should do that. I know would be able to pick up the phone and give them a call and hopefully talk to them. And it's great that everybody up here, I've worked with everybody up here. I just want to give them kudos, even though I don't have to. But the things that the council's working on, so I'm on the county council. The council takes care of the finances of the county. The commissioners take care of going out for bids for projects and coming to the council for funding. The commissioners take care of the employees, they take care of the buildings, they take care of personnel. We take care of the budgetary items, so we take care of raises, we take care of balancing the budget, getting everything done, putting it together, setting salaries. So that's the difference between the two. So one of the things we're doing is the ARP money that we've received at the end of this year, all of it needs to be appropriated. But you also have to understand that there was lost revenue. You could declare, we had an accountant come in and a percentage of, if you lost revenue during COVID, you could offset the restrictions that were placed on ARP. So they did not have the restrictions, so you could spend that money on almost anything you wanted if you had lost revenue. And that's pretty much where we're at. There's about $5 million left in that account. And we've spent a little over $5 million on 3 sewer projects that I can think of right now off the top of my head. The 421 300 North project going out to Love's Truck Stop. We also have $1.5 million allocated for Highway 35 and 94 for expanding sewer out into that TIF area. And then we just funded the on Hudson Lake and Saucony Lake, the first $1.5 million in that project out there. And the whole purpose of these is to expand growth and get more sewer lines out there, city water, city sewers, so there can be more expansion into the cities from the cities and more expansion for housing and everything else, because we all know how bad the septic issues are. Some of the other things, fun things that we've done is there's Bethany Church is doing a fundraiser right now to put a splash pad out at our dog park out over there. They're taking care of it, they're doing it all, so that would be a nice addition. The community crossing, we're doing this next agenda coming up this month. We're committing $1.5 million to community crossing, and I'm sure the cities take care of that, participate in that also, because that's the state, it's up to $1 million, so it's technically it's $1.5 million now. So that's why we're doing $1.5 million, but in the past it's always been $1 million. But that's money that if you put up $1 million, if you pay $1 million, they'll give you $1 million. But you have to spend it to get it. And so we capitalize on that as much as we can. The redevelopment commission, I chair the redevelopment commission for the county. Kingsbury, there's more activity going on out of Kingsbury Industrial Park than there ever has been. The CSX coming in from the south, the rail, is the switch is in. There's just a few little minor connections there. The CN on the north over by Limborg's. We got a ready grant. We put the bridge in, so Limborg is installing the remainder of the track to connect to the park. And as everybody knows, years ago, the county put in $6 million for rail out there. And it was right before I came on the council. And when I went out there, I'm like, okay, show me this rail. It was literally a piece of rail that had no connection on this end and no connection on that end. It was a rail to nothing. And this was the section, and the connections were never made. So in the process, the county foreclosed on all the rail out there because of the deal we had with the investors. So the county now owns all the rail within the park and the easements. So we hired, and so what it's done in the park is it used to be, it was owned by, I think, quite a few different individuals. And so if somebody wanted to bring in a rail car, you had to go get permission from Mike, I had to get permission from Tim, and I had to get permission from Mike to go across, and they all say, hey, give me $10, give me 20, you know. So it was very hard to do business there. Now we've eliminated all that, and it's finally coming together. We've got 3 major companies looking to come out there, and there's even more. I mentioned the Love's Truck Stop over on 300 North, and I joke because nothing speaks progress like a new truck stop. But it's part of developing that intersection and creating more growth out there. And we got the sewer and the water lines out there. The other thing is I chair the Fairgrounds Management Event Corporation, FMEC, which is the non-for-profit that oversees the fairgrounds now. So we've kind of taken it out of the commissioner's hands, out of the fair board's hands, and we oversee it. So we're currently working on a comprehensive plan on where we want to see the fairgrounds in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. And we meet once a month on the first Wednesday of the month. And we've got the planners from Michigan City, LaPorte, county planners there. We've got a great group of people there, and we've got some really good ideas of what that can actually be out there. With that, I think that covers it.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
We'll move over to the city of LaPorte, and we'll start with City Council President Tim Franke.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, Fonda, thanks. This building, if you haven't been next door in the makerspace or downstairs, there's a studio and a podcast room and some other resources. It's a really awesome place, and I use it a lot with my daughter, but there's so much you can do in here. You should definitely check it out. We continue to have about, I won't say a million, but quite a few different angles of things going on in the city, and it goes very slow but also very fast in terms of keeping up with all the progress and different areas of the city that we work to improve upon. Most recently, you may have read that Newport Landing is now fully spoken for. It's not final yet, but we're getting close to that final stage, and that's been a project dating back to, I don't know, at least 3 prior administrations. But it's nice to see that finally we'll have a nice retail outlet and space there. It's going to be a great use of land. We're also nearing the completion of the 39 North annexation, which is a big step forward for the residents and business alike. And we also know that there's a lot of business interested in that area, but could never or would never move there until they knew for sure that they were going to have a safe water supply and be able to operate for years to come. So I suspect we'll see a lot of growth in that area moving forward. So aside from those couple of economic advancements, which there are many more, but we've made a lot of strides in our quality of life, and that's been a big focus of everyone on the council and mayor as well. Clear Lake Loop will be completing this year. The Fox Park improvements are supposed to be done in the spring, and I look forward to spending more time out there. There's going to be a lot of quality places to enjoy Clear Lake and all the nature it has to offer. Also, can't hear any trains right now, which I'm excited for. I've seen people online saying this is going to be so dangerous, but there's a lot of planning that goes into that. We've installed barriers. You can't just drive around the gate. You have to really want to get hit. Maybe not totally that far, but it's safe. I can assure you that. And the trains are something that I think we all get used to, but once it's gone, I've already noticed, at night if I'm outside, I don't constantly hear the horns, and that's a great thing. Aside from that, we're going to continue working on every day to improve our city, and we know we've got some nice businesses coming in that are going to provide nice jobs. We're seeing an increase of people moving here, but where do we house them? And that's been a focus for several years now. There's quite a few housing developments going on right now. We know we need affordable housing as well, but as Jim Pressel could tell you, it's not cheap to build a house right now. So one thing that we saw in HFL's home study that I didn't really think about but made a lot of sense to me is if you build upper level housing, there's a lot of people sitting right now in what would be considered affordable housing that could and would move, but there's no options for them. So that in turn is going to free up some other options, and I think it'll have an effect on all levels of housing, but we need to continue to work on that every day because we have a major shortage of housing. But there are a few projects in motion right now, and we'll keep our eye on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We'll move to Mayor Dermody. Mayor, I just want to acknowledge up front, Randy somehow got your cell phone. I don't know how that happened, but we'll check into that and make sure that we keep that secret from now on.
Yeah, right. I appreciate that.
He doesn't answer my calls.
Good morning, everyone, and it is great to be here. As Tim has said, he took my thunder when I said it's nice not to have to yell because there are no train horns, and the people that he said are now complaining about no train horns were the same ones complaining to us about the train horns 4 years ago. And this has been something going on for just close to about 20 years in the city of LaPorte, to be a quiet zone. And many communities do have a quiet zone. We've done through the Federal Railroad, and I'm not a big proponent of federal government right now, and they've done a wonderful job. We have a railroad, Norfolk Southern, who does not care about communities. They care about themselves. They don't want to be told what to do, and they could care less about their relationship in each community. So despite them, we were able to get this done. I am excited about this second term. We've said, to hopefully no surprise by now, that if we were going to be status quo, I'm certainly not the right person for the job, and this council is not the right team for the job. We committed that we would improve our hometown, that we would do things that many of you have talked about. to not only our residents, not to make them only happy, but to bring back those kids, all of our children that we've educated here, and give them a reason to come back to LaPorte. And so I think we're doing that. But as well, you know, this is the first year, 2024, that in the history of the city of LaPorte, we will be living within a budget that does not spend more than we have coming in. And that was very difficult. But you do it every day in your home, in your business. And one of the things that I committed to is we will not spend more than we have coming in. And that made some difficult decisions. Transport is one example. We have a new way to think of things when it comes to transport. That alone was spending more than $150,000 more than that was coming in. That's a police officer, that's a firefighter, and we have to think of new ways to do things. And so we're excited to do that. I just got back from Washington, D.C. Tuesday evening, and to Jim's point, or Representative Pressel's point, you know, we met with Federal Railroad, we talked about highway, and they're spending 2/3 more on highway dollars than they have coming in. And at some point, from a mayor's perspective and a resident's perspective, they've got to get a grip, and they've got to address the budget issues. And I know that's going to make things very difficult here in our city, but we have some serious financial woes going on at the federal government that at some point they have to get a budget that lives within their means, despite the fact that it's going to affect the state, it's going to affect us as locals, but it's time. So we'll see how that plays out. In LaPorte, we're working on housing. You've seen all the data that shows when you don't build homes for 30 years, outside of basically one hometown builder, two, Jim Pressel and Mitch Ficus, you're going to get into a deficit. And we are in that deficit of housing. Tim's mentioned we have some large things happening. We probably have one of the biggest announcements that'll be coming here in the state of Indiana or in the Midwest very soon. Can I say that?
You're the boss, you can say whatever you like.
I mean, it's no surprise the acreage that's been annexed on the south side of town, and so we're excited about that. And we need housing of all types. And Julie West, I think, said it at one of the recent meetings. No matter where we've gone to put housing, you know, there's going to be 10, 20, 30 people in opposition. The best way to keep everyone happy is to do nothing. We're not going to come here and do nothing. And we just had the most recent situation at Park Street. We have homes that are going to be built there, again, by an out-of-town developer. First time in 30 years that we really have an out-of-town developer that's looking to build neighborhoods. But everywhere we turn, there's going to be opposition. And we try to be respectful of that opposition, but we need housing. And when we have trustees that want to discuss that, hey, we need to help the low income, their #1 job through the funding that they receive is to help those individuals with housing. So start buying down loans, start buying down rents. We're doing the incentive part to bring these developers in. Start doing your part and help these people get into and attain home ownership and rentals. Quit just fighting the progress that is our community in LaPorte. We have the hospital site. That's going to be going up here. We're excited. We see housing as the main driver here across the street, and I have to admit the hospital's been fantastic to allow us to have a voice. We also have 18th Street, Dan Steiner Homes, the #1 builder, rated builder in Northwest Indiana, is building the homes on 18th Street. And then we have, thanks to the school corporation, the Koch building. And here's another scenario. Everybody wants to help those leaving homelessness, and we're a big proponent of that. The Koch building will house 18 or so apartments for those that have left homelessness due to physical disability or mental disability, and mental health is a big issue. It doesn't mean you have it for life, but at one point you may have had an issue. Or you might be blind, you might be heavy. This is going to lead, especially number one for veterans. That's the number one priority into these homes. And there will be wraparound services on site at the Coke building for those individuals that need help. So if you didn't know this, it's a similar facility to what's right across from St. Pete's, right across the street on Michigan Ave. That's been for years, housing opportunities, and we're excited to what's going to happen over at the Coke building. And again, if you haven't noticed, we have a wonderful team, and my best job is to stay out of their way. And I would take this team if we went and bought a private business or anywhere, and many of them are sitting here. It's a wonderful team with high expectations. We're not gonna allow rentals, housings, to turn back to dumps and turn back to slumlords. We are increasing the expectation. Our residents deserve to live in quality housing in the city of LaPorte. And we're gonna continue to raise those standards and get people help that they need. But you may have seen, we just did the Triangle area, we had an individual breaking out windows, dumping mattresses out front. We'll try to get people the help they need, but you're not gonna do that in our community. So part of that is also we've applied the READY grant, and our number one priority with the state is going to be housing. We have a great partner in HFL. We're asking for $12 million, and we think with HFL's partnership, our goal will be to have close to $20 million that we can invest into the city of LaPorte in all types of housing. We know the lowest income area is Harrison, Maple, and Jefferson Avenue, and we want to clean that up and continue to clean that area up so people feel safe having a walkable downtown. And the drugs are going to continue to be a top priority to make people feel uncomfortable in trafficking in our community. I have assured the new chief here of police that I will stop knocking on doors myself with people like from the council and other people and let the police do their job. But we know where the drugs are happening, and we have to continue to make individuals feel uncomfortable. I'll kind of wrap up. Tim mentioned the annexation. We're excited about 39 North, that's come to a close here. Landlord registry is going to be another part of holding landlords accountable so that, as we saw 2 years ago, when there was a potential bomb sitting at a rental unit, we didn't have to wait 45 minutes for our fire and our police to go in and address this issue because we couldn't find the landlord or didn't know who owned the rental, so we could get authority to go into the house. And that's unacceptable, and that's why we're going to have a landlord registry, and we look forward to any of you or all of your support in addressing the landlords that should not mind being able to put a name and number together, that when we need to talk to somebody because there's a fire, an issue, we should be able to call somebody 24/7. So we look forward hopefully to your help there. With that, I'll kind of clean it up and look forward to any questions and opportunities to visit.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a series of questions that have been submitted to our organization over the course of the last week or so, but we want to take your questions as well, so I'll kind of mix in here. But does anyone have any questions? Sure.
So this is for Randy Novak. What you mentioned, the Kingsbury, I think it's industrial plant now, not KOP as we normally call it. One of the concerns, Hotspot Cafe and the LaPorte Small Business Coalition. One of the questions that, or concerns that was brought to me at my cafe, coffee shop, hometown, everybody solved the problems. They're concerned about the Chinese company that's going in there, about giving them tax abatements and concerns about their forthrightness because of who they are, and how do you feel about that?
So there's actually several companies looking to come into KIP. I think the one you're talking about is the corn milling plant that, and you gotta look at it two sides, and I'll address the China part. But they're gonna need 25 to 40 million bushels of corn a year. And they mill it and they make a product that our farmers are currently having to buy from China now. So they're gonna do that here, and they do a lot of other products. So if it was anybody but China, we'd be rolling out the red carpet and saying, you gotta come here, you gotta do this. The thing, and this is my Javit, my counterparts over here, he knows it's coming. The state of Indiana Economic Development, I don't know, I'm assuming that's the name of the office, has an office in China to bring businesses from China to the United States. There's 24 different companies in Indiana that are they're from China. And it's what's been told to us is, I think it's 39%, I don't know why I looked at you, Bert. But anyway, I was looking for a head nod there. I appreciate it. But is ownership within China. The rest of it is outside. The government itself doesn't own it. So we understand the stigmatism, but the state of Indiana Economic Development team came up when we met with the other one that's looking to do a battery process plant because of what's going on out in New Carlisle, so they want to be here. The state economic development team is here in the meeting saying how much we want you here, we want you here. But then there's legislation downstate to eliminate the China can't own any land in Indiana. So it's all coming, and it's not their fault, but it's all coming from the state of Indiana. You talk about mixed signals. It's like, so we understand the issue with China. We have the same concerns about China. If they were digging up uranium and sending it back to China, it'd be an easy no. But we have uranium? You dig deep enough. But the thing is Farm Bureau is behind this. They're like, we want this, we need this in our community. The stigmatism is the China, so we're working on trying to, and this company's out ahead of that, trying to head it off. And the other thing that I'll add is, the other piece of it is China buying farmland. This Kingsbury has been zoned heavy industrial manufacturing since 1959. So it's industrial ground being farmed because there's no industry there right now. So it's not taking away from the farm from ag ground that's out there. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a moving target.
I can follow up on that just a little bit too. So there's a bill right now at the State House that would, it came from the House. It's coming now to the Senate, and basically would say that if a parcel of land, regardless of zoning, regardless of acreage, that had been under a crop in the last 5 years, it could not be purchased by, I call them the hateful six: China, Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, and Iraq. Or I'm sorry, Iran. Those are the hate that we don't do that this would impact. So that's what this was done. Now the problem is that we've got a lot of industrial parks, especially some of these older ones, where what do you do with property? Things zoned industrial, nobody's building on it, so you put a crop on it to make some money. So I think what's going to end up happening, is that there's going to be some guardrails maybe put around that a little bit, and maybe zero isn't the answer. Maybe it's a couple of 100 acres, maybe 300 acres, whatever the case may be. But on the project that he's talking about in Kingsbury, this is a process called onshoring. So rather than sending our raw materials across the ocean, process them there, and this company actually processes them there and sells it back to us. So Co-Alliance is a buyer of these products, of these amino acids. So what better way to secure our supply chain than have it here? Granted, it's not our money, but they're paying taxes. It's in a TIF district. It's going to employ workers. It's going to be built here with, it's going to be built with American labor. It's going to be built with American supplies, and they're paying taxes. So if we're going to buy these products anyway, hold your nose and say, you know what, bring it here. We'll take your tax money. We'll take your $800 million to build your plant. It's hard philosophically, but that's that's kind of the whole reality to it. So how this works out at the state level and how we work out those land opportunities is going to be is still an ongoing conversation.
The other part of your question was tax abatement, and whether I just want to address that. It's in a TIF, so it makes no sense, this is my take on it, to give tax abatement in a TIF. The TIF is the purpose of it is to capture the growth in taxes to help pay for the infrastructure there. If we abate that, then we're not getting any growth out there. So, but there'd be things maybe worked in a TIF, TIF incremental financing to help with some of the infrastructure. So in other words, the taxes they use might go back into that, but it would be contained there. But I do not see currently the council even entertaining a tax abatement inside of a TIF area.
And just to add that, Bert and I had a Zoom, and we're supportive of progress. We just have to, and I think they're doing their due diligence. This is the same firm that went to North Dakota and was denied because they tried setting up shop 9 miles from an Air Force base. Now, they said it was accidental and so forth, but we met, you gotta be very leery, you have to be extra due diligence, and I just wanna give Randy the credit and the state, more with the IDC and our legislators that are gonna watch this very closely to see what the future holds for them.
I just want to add one more thing, not to burn all the time.
Did you say that 2 things?
I know. Tom brought up a good thing. So the reason that they left South Dakota, North Dakota, is because the city had to annex that property. And the city got greedy and decided to annex a huge chunk of property, and that's what got the people upset. The military, just so you know, the military base that's out there has an airport next to it that is owned by China, and China trains 200 fighter pilots a year there, and they go back to China. That's okay, but by God, don't grind corn in LaPorte County. I mean, we need to get a better, clearer picture from our federal government and from our state legislators, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, because it's kind of hard. We're getting mixed signals. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Randy. Let's go so Mike, I'll start with you, and Jim, if you want to weigh in on this as well. A lot of discussion about the replacement of lead water lines throughout the state of Indiana. I want to touch on some of those discussions and where that's going.
Yeah, that was a priority bill for the Senate. It's come over the House now. And yeah, so we know that water safety is a big issue. We don't want to be the next flood. And some of these older properties and in some of these older areas, having those lead lines going into the house is certainly a safety issue. And then getting folks to be able to actually become compliant, especially landlords, to be able to get those lines replaced. So what the bill does, it provides an actual pretty clear path on how to do it with some subsidy money as well. That's kind of what the bill does, unless you get to change it at all. But it's pretty straightforward.
I don't even think it's got a hearing in the House yet. So this kind of stems from the federal government said we got to do something about that. There's not a legislator in Indiana. There's probably not a person in this room that would disagree with, yes, we need to change out all that lead pipe. But as the federal government and the state jumps in, there's a cost factor too. You can't put a cost factor on life and the harmful causes. But the way that it's set up right now, unless it's changing in committee, I'm sure Chairman Saladay is all over this. For the cities and the towns, it's a little simpler than the consumer connecting that last piece is only you, right? So if this could be a federal mandate, I'm really want to advocate for 100%. This comes from our federal tax dollars that need to come back to us to pay for that last connection. So that's where I'm at. Hopefully we'll get that taken care of. The Senate missed that part.
Mayor, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, and so the lead copper rule at the federal level has gone from a 30-year requirement to replace all lead/copper lines, which we're an older community, and our water is clean, our water is safe. But the federal government has gone that it all has to be replaced in 30 years down to 10 years. And that's going to be a difficult process to do. But our biggest concern right off the bat is, hopefully the state will help us. Right now, our department, our water department can do probably 3 times the work that a contractor can. And we understand we're gonna have to contract with different companies to do some of the lead and copper replacement. But right now, the federal and state government will not allow us to do some of that work in-house. That saves taxpayer money, that allows us to get it done quicker, but the experts who are all in our department are not allowed to do it themselves. They have to send it out for bid and let companies do it, which is gonna cost much more money. So hopefully the state's gonna come through and say, hey, you know, if we can do the work ourselves, which we've been doing, just let us continue to do that.
It will stay down in the city, Tim and Mayor. A lot of different questions about annexation. I'll just sort of piece a few together. We want to speak to why annexation is needed. The city's annexed a number of different properties. How does that impact kind of the growth plan for the city as we move forward? And either one of you can start.
I'll start. So it impacts growth by obviously we have more land, more places to build housing, more places to bring in business. But there's an ordinance that was made prior, this is my 5th year on council, and prior to my first term, that said we will not supply water utilities to any outside areas. The cost reward just isn't there, and it doesn't make sense really from a financial standpoint for us to provide services to people that aren't paying tax dollars into the city. And so that's something that we had to address with 39 North, and realistically from their tax standpoint, 95+% of homeowners will not see an increase at all in taxes. It just, instead of going to the county, will come to us, and that'll allow us to do, those tax dollars allow us to do more things on economic growth as well.
So, and I mean this sincerely, we do not want to annex and control the world. But we do want to address situations and problems. And on day 1, 39 North, for example, I sat with our water department and Andy Snyder, who's standing in the back, and said, what are you going to do about 39 North, the water situation? I said, I don't know. Why do I care about 39 North? They're outside the city. I didn't know anything about what was happening. For years, this has been a problem, and being educated on them, we had a problem to solve. We also have Park Street, somebody that wanted to be super voluntary annex so they could develop on Park Street housing. On the south side, you see farmers that want to annex into the city because there's development opportunities. So we know where we're gonna build within the city of LaPorte. We've taken Tidma Bakery down so Habitat for Humanity can go there. We do have some area that we're finding to build housing, but for growth. And many of you came to us and said, we're tired of LaPorte falling behind for years. We need to compete, we need to develop, and annexation is a part of that. But we want to do what we say we're going to do, and right now we have our hands full with what we're working on, and we're going to see that all through completion.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions from the crowd before I move on?
Franke, I have one, like, to the city, because we're talking about a lot of the need for housing, and there's not, I mean, maybe a handful of spots or sites within the current city right now. I mean, would there be any way the city would look into, because like building costs is so high, you know, alleviating some of those like costs, like tap-in fees, or some infill, like small infill projects, not large infill projects, but like I want to build a house in LaPorte and it costs $3,000 to tap in. I mean, that's quite a bit of money, but like to build a cheaper, lower end house. I mean, is that something the city could look into, you think?
So two things that we've tried to do, and I'll speak to this, is number one, be easy to deal with. Quick to deal with. We don't want the bureaucracy, we want you digging holes. And right now, and again, we have some properties, in fact, Jeff has a list, Jeff Batchelor has a list of condemnations of homes that we've dealt with, where if we can get it into the hands of private developers, builders, we want to see that happen sooner than later. And yes, we want to see, whether it's people like Housing Opportunities or a private developer or Mitch Ficus or Jim Pressel, that, hey, Jim, we've got this lot, or Mitch, this lot across from Lincoln School that, because we had a slumlord there that burned the home to the ground, we now have a piece of property there that we'd love to see something inexpensive used for a single mom with kids. How can we make it affordable? So we're willing to look at all ideas. We certainly, my thing is, I don't want to wait 2 years. I don't want to wait. I want to see, if we're going to give you an incentive, let's start digging a hole tomorrow. If we come to an agreement. That's what I'm asking. I think that's what our team is asking for. Let's not sit on it. Let's get something built.
Yeah, I mean, because it'll turn around and be on taxable.
Absolutely.
Generate property taxes.
So the other thing is the state, there's a, it's called a whole grant, but it's what it is, a whole TIF, but it's a housing TIF. So the county, the restrictions from the state prior to the year recently was you can only use it once. So LaPorte County can only do one, and then we're done. The city of LaPorte can only do one. The state has loosened that so that you can do more than that within this 4-year period. So the county is also looking at that. And what that allows you to do is capture the taxes that are in there to help pay for some of that infrastructure, with the sewer, the water, and everything that needs to go in there. But we got to work with the cities. We're working with Michigan City. We work with Porte, with the 39 North, and everything out there. So that's the county's goal, is to expand some of these services at our cost, so that later, if the people out there want it and the city wants to annex, it's between those two parties. If they want to do that, the infrastructure is there and the growth is there. So
I always take pause a little bit as we expand more and more TIF, because what that really does is, in the case of a housing TIF, I voted against the bill because
It was my legislation.
still voted against it. Because when you add a TIF, that's taking tax dollars out of the revenue stream for the community. So that means when you hear TIF, somebody has to subsidize that increase in infrastructure. So you bring in a subdivision, and all that tax revenue is now captured to pay for the roads, develop the site, bring utilities in, and everything else for the benefit of the developer. That's great, but when you fill in those houses with a bunch of kids and they have to go to the school system, that school system is not getting the benefit of that increased tax base. They're not. So that's going to be borne by everybody else. When the city has to come and plow the streets, or the county has to do it, that's going to be borne by every other taxpayer. So TIF to me needs to be used very, very judiciously and very carefully, because we are a state that has tax caps. So your taxes are capped at 1% if you're a homesteader, and that's what we're stuck with. So when you have the cap at a finite amount of money to grow your tax base by, and you start cleaving off these chunks of growth and revenue opportunities, we've got to use that really, really judiciously, because it really causes a bit of a problem. So.
And can I add to that?
Sure. Mayor, hold on one second. Jim, go ahead.
So, since I created it, I know it pretty well. And I agree with the senator, right? So TIF is not a huge product that I
No, it's yes, but.
Yes, but. So this is a tool that was put in place to be able to help bring down that cost of housing. Now, the senator refers to we're gonna give the developer a break. That's not the way this is set up. So that the city or the county has to put that infrastructure into to the point of housing is so expensive, but a huge part of that is that infrastructure. So the benefit is really to the consumer, it's not to the developer. So I take a little bit of issue with that, obviously. Without these tools, you're not going to see that growth. You're just not going to see it happen. So if you didn't have the TIF, the school wouldn't receive the tax dollars but I'm gonna tell you, they receive the ADM count, right? They're not gonna get the capital, but they get the education dollars from that student being included in there. So, good, bad, or indifferent, this is a great tool, it's a great opportunity, and that's why we have the guardrails on it of 1 per 4 years. Now that locals are taking advantage of it, we've expanded it a little bit. Warsaw's taking advantage of it, it's a great product, right? So the schools do want to grow, the cities want to grow, and this is how you get there and keep that cost down to the consumer, because it's ridiculous what new housing costs.
Fair.
Yeah, and I've got great respect for the senator and the representative. I've sat in their seat, but don't tell us what to do. We'll make those decisions. We're elected to make the decisions. You will hold us accountable, vote us out of office, or continue. But again, to Jim's point, these students won't be there if we can't build the subdivision where to live. And sometimes those tools, we need those tools so that we can put those people and those families in the homes. And I think we've got a great relationship with LaPorte Schools. We can always work something out together, and that's where we're fortunate outside the county. I mean, outside Randy, we see the embarrassment that's happening at the county level, but we get along with the school system. We work together and get along. And Randy, I say that, and I'm serious. And it's upon all of us to start looking at, and I'm going to get off track here, because when we're trying to recruit people, businesses, and they're reading about what's happening at the county, and we're having to respond to Fortune 10 companies of, we're watching this on the county. We all laugh that, hey, we like to watch those meetings instead of watching Seinfeld and so forth. But if we don't start finding people to step up and run for office that are trying to do it, I don't care, Republican, Democrat, whatever, that want to do the right thing, we're all, and our children are going to pay a real penance for the activity that's been happening for years at the county level, because we all can do better of getting out to you why LaPorte is special. And we haven't done a good job, and you'll start seeing that. You'll start seeing with the schools, because right now, tell me what's great about LaPorte schools. Tell me one thing. We've been working with the schools. Tell me what's great about the city. We've got to do a better job of letting you, our residents, know what's special about our community, and you're going to start seeing that. And secondarily, we can't accept what's happening when government behaves like they do at the county level.
I've never been so appreciative of being excluded from something.
Chris.
Chris Chatfield. TIF, whether it's commercial or housing, it's an economic development tool. And I think the most important thing to understand is that if you provide the TIF dollars, the incremental tax for that property, for that infrastructure, that means you have more people coming in to live. When you have more people coming in to live, you have more people that go out to dinner, they buy groceries, they buy other services within the city, and that helps drive the city. So it's an economic development tool. And I think that we need to understand it, and Mayor, you're right. It's important that the message is clear. I was on the Redevelopment Commission in Michigan City for many years, and we could not get our city council people to understand it's a tool. It's a tool to help the city grow. Otherwise, understand, you put in a development, you want that developer to come in, the city's gonna float a bond, and they're gonna have to pay that. So it's a flip-flop of the money that you use for the TIF for that development, or whatever it is. And so understand that when the money is used for housing, or in Michigan City's case, they're building apartments and some other things, those dollars, there are other people that come in and they spend their money in our community, and those dollars come back to the community. So I think we should understand it, and the message needs to be clear, right? And it's hard because people don't take the paper anymore. It's hard to get that message out for people to understand that it really is a great tool. It's misunderstood.
And just so everybody understands, when you create a TIF, the property taxes on the day that it's created still come into the county as normal. It's only the growth on there that is captured.
That's right.
So, and it should be for a period of time. They have expiration dates. It's not a forever it's gonna be there. It's to help cover the cost to put that in there, and then it should be resolved, and it should.
So, and I don't want to get off on this tangent too much. I'm not against the TIF tool in itself. I'm not. It's a great economic development tool. But when we legislate at the state level. So we have communities that don't use it as judiciously as they should. Gary, Indiana, for instance, they have over 20 TIF districts in the city. Virtually the entire city is TIF, I think it's TIF. I mean, and we've got certain areas around the state that have used it so so liberally that it's causing a detriment to the community. So, any of these tools that you use, TIF, tax abatements, any of the other, job training credits, all the other things that we have, great tools as long as they're used appropriately and not just handed out to everybody. Hey, you want to bring in a business? Sure, we'll give you 20-year tax abatement, 10. We'll give you free property. You will waive the personal property tax. We'll give you some job training credits. We'll throw some land in there, and we'll hook up your utilities for free. We've got to make sure that whatever we do, we're using all the tools, we use them judiciously. So,
all right, Jim, let's go to you. Are there any bills which have not gotten traction in this short session that you believe may be supported next year in a long session? Anything forecasting that we should be looking out for moving forward?
Well, I hope my prior authorization bill is one of those. That's a good piece of policy. I was interviewed in Capital Chronicles a couple weeks ago. We talked a little bit about it, and they kind of gave me some brief about using committee time to vet bills. So I heard a bill that would raise the speed limit to 75 miles an hour. I heard a bill that would totally outlaw autonomous trucks, which is not even a thing that they can do right now, but we're going to outlaw something, get rid of technology. So the reason I do that, and you'll see other chairmen do that, the General Assembly, you work at things, and I think I mentioned it earlier, it may be 3 or 4 years before you can do something. So I gave those authors an opportunity to see who's opposed to it, who's in favor of it, to continue to work what's possibly a good idea. Now, I'm not in favor of the 75-mile-an-hour thing, and I gave that author an opportunity to find out there are a lot of people that are not in favor of that. So I don't know if that comes back or not, but now the AI, or the autonomous trucks, I'm kind of interested in that. I don't think anybody in the room wants to see truckless or driverless trucks going up and down the road, probably not a good thing. That technology's coming, it's 30 years down the road, or sooner. So that's kind of why we do that, is to allow the process to be vetted early on to make good policy.
Mike, anything you want to add?
Sure. So I filed a bill this year to address pregnancy reimbursement costs and pregnancy availability for labor and delivery. I talked about it a little bit earlier. And what we did as part of the when we reworked our abortion laws a few years ago, I amended some language into that required a study to be done in our neighboring states to see how is Indiana's reimbursement rates compared on Medicaid, because half our kids are born on Medicaid, say in Indiana. That's the number. And how do we, and when you get out towards Starr County and Marshall County, the number goes up a little bit higher than that. So what do we do to make sure that those services are available? So we did the study, and I filed a bill this year using that study to get our reimbursement rates up to the average of our neighboring states. And it was a $29 million fiscal. Of course, it didn't get a hearing because it's not a budget year, but I wanted to file it because you've got to start having that conversation. We also need to address, and this was another amendment I put in the bill last year too, that required a study of our Medicaid rates compared to the rest of the country. We haven't changed our Medicaid reimbursement rates to our hospitals in 23 years. It's not hard to decipher. It's very easy to decipher. You just take the amount of recipients and you divide it into the amount of money we spend, and it's about $1,600 per recipient, same as what it was in 2001. So we haven't touched those rates, which equates to higher health costs for everybody else. Once again, you got 40% of the people on Medicaid, which we do, and they go to the hospitals have to take the rate. So who has to supplement that difference? Everybody else. So we need to start looking at that, and that's a very big picture. You know, Medicaid accounts for about 18 to 19% of our budget for the state budget, second only to education, which is about half, and that's a number that continues to grow. But we have this double-edged sword. We have to both provide services, but you also have to try to pay the costs. And that it's a very, very complex situation, because the other half of this is the feds subsidize the other half of Medicaid. So we put in $1,600, they put in about $1,600. So, but if our level of service availability drops, they'll pull their money out. So that's a big conversation that we're continuing to have, and it starts, like Jim said, with starting some of these bills moving to get the conversation started.
Mayor?
And I'm gonna ask, really, this is more for all of your thoughts, and I hope you recognize how fortunate we are that Representative Pressel's in leadership as head of Roads Committee. Here's our local issue, and I think last year they passed what I'm calling red light cameras on highway, what do we call those?
I call it work zone safety enforcement.
Enforcement with red light cameras, that if you speed.
I outlaw red light cameras. For the
So,
record.
but you can get pulled over by automated.
Yeah, you can receive a ticket over 11 mile an hour over an active work zone. So it has to be signed prior to getting into that work zone. There have to be people present. There's a seriously long process for this to take place, and it can happen in 4 different locations in the state. You can't do 5, but it can rotate, right? So it's only 4 at a maximum. So you have to know that you're entering an active work zone. You have to know that you've exited the portion that's active. So you can still be in the work zone, but if nothing's going on, we let you know that. So if you're traveling more than 11 mile an hour over, it'll take a picture of your license plate. The registered owner of the vehicle will get a $50, or the first time is a freebie. No, and there's no points associated with this. The next time it's like $50. The second time it's $100. If you do it the third time, I think you should lose your license, but that's not what the bill says. So we're talking about 11 mile an hour over. And when I took testimony from a father that was in an active work zone with his son, he witnessed his son get hit so hard by a vehicle, it split him in half. And a father that had, I'm going to choke up on that because every time I think about it, I can't as a parent imagine what that did to that family. So yeah, you should lose your license.
So my question, and to Jim and I've had, and it's much bigger than just Jim here, but our officers can't be everywhere. You know, we have speeders everywhere, but school zone safety, would you support the concept of having this type of technology, and maybe just at the time when kids are being dropped off and kids are being picked up, we can't have an officer at every single school. And I know it's difficult because he's got members of his caucus that are further right, don't want any more government grab.
I think what's
But
interesting about that, Mayor, is...
would you support that? I mean, that's the question I've kind of asked in the future.
Would you?
Well, there's another piece to this too. So we just passed out of the Senate. I think it's coming to your side, maybe. I don't know what you guys are going to criminal code. It's cameras on school buses. Did you get that? Bill, that comes in.
I did get that. I'm going to hear that this Tuesday. I actually did that camera legislation 4 years ago. And what this is going to do is it creates another pathway to where the prosecutors can actually prosecute this. So in Indiana, in one given day, with what we call a survey to all of the schools, we didn't get everybody's back. I mean, we're working off of maybe 300 surveys, but the daily number of folks that travel around a stop arm camera in Indiana, take a guess. What do you think it is? Just throw a couple numbers out there and not be correct. 3,500 a day, every day, 3,500. The number that he has on the right is 250 a day, on the right-hand side. That's what the kids are getting on calls.
But would you guys support, in addition to that, since Mike's trying to hijack my conversation here, the support that we have that technology being used in school zone areas for pickup and drop off?
I agree. Cicero going to Midway all the time, and if anybody's been through that, it works. If you go through it at a certain time, people are hitting those cameras and they're doing 20 miles an hour religiously to get through the school zones. If you go through there at 7 o'clock at night, it's an interstate again, but they do what they're intended, is at least my experience, I would say.
Because they would need the support. Would you raise your hand if you like support that? So
Honestly, I've heard that bill. One of my good friends in my committee, I allowed him another one of those bills to take a hearing on it, but I did not vote it out because the committee would not vote for it. I didn't want to embarrass the author by killing this bill right there. It's archived in history forever, but I did that to him, so I'm not going to do that. But it's interesting when you hear the testimony and how other states that have done this, and there are not many, it actually reduces the speed by 83%. And the process to get there is just notification to the parents that says, we're going to implement this and we're going to use cameras, and this is the date we're going to implement it. And you can see the reduction in speed just because somebody is going to watch and I'm going to get a penalty for breaking the law. So it's an interesting deal, and it's 83% reduction. Think about that.
Councilman Franke, as you look back over the last 4 years, what piece of legislation passed by the council has made the greatest impact?
That's a good question. I don't know that I could pinpoint one single ordinance. I think any ordinance that we work on, there's a purpose for, and we don't do things just to do things. I think some of the ones that truly make a noticeable difference right away would be our contractor fraud ordinance, making sure what happens if you saw the banks doesn't happen again. Certainly the work we've done towards condemnation of housing that is a major problem on a criminal standpoint, and giving our city the authority to say enough is enough, and we've already used that several times. The work on annexation and rezoning, it all plays together. It's tough to say this one specific ordinance, that was it. So kind of avoid it, but that's my answer. I really don't think I could pinpoint one exact ordinance.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions before we close this morning? So if you'll help me thank our panelists this morning, please.